Book Buzz, Harpercollins Book Buzz. Check it out. Do-do-do, do-do-do. Book Buzz, Harpercollins Book Buzz. Brought to you by Library Love Fest.
Hello, everyone. How are you all? It's Virginia Stanley. Who's with me?
Present, Lainey Mays.
Hey everyone, it's Essie.
So the Library Love Fest here and back for another episode of Galley Club, the book club for librarians. So welcome. Last week, Lainey Mays was here to announce the second installment. Well, this is the second installment. She announced the selection for the May Galley Club, which is a debut novel called All That's Left Unsaid by Tracey Lien. And joining us today are her editor and her agent, Emily Crump and Hillary Jacobson. Unveil yourselves. Hello, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Hi, Hillary. I'm going to say this. Lainey, the second Lainey got her eyes on this manuscript, it's all she talked about. And, you know, we all have different, Lainey, Essie, and I sort of have differences of, not differences of opinion about books, but different tastes, different likes. And then sometimes we hit that Venn diagram of love, and this is it. So, but it all started when Lainey got her hands on this manuscript and did a deep dive and just could not stop talking about it. So I'm going to stop talking and hand this over to Lainey, who's going to officially introduce our guests, and we'll get the conversation rolling about this wonderful book. Lainey.
Thank you. Hi, Emily. Hi, Hillary. Thanks for being here. Before we get into our May Galley Club pick, I just want to give everyone a little more information about what books you've worked on and give them. Let's set the stage. So we have Emily Crump, executive editor at William Morrow. And so I've already said hi, so I'll say hi again. But you've worked on I'm just going to give a couple of authors because you have so many. But Karen Slaughter, Pieces of Her, you worked on. Now that's a movie, and the upcoming Girl Forgotten, which I think we might get into in a little bit. Jocelyn Jackson's Never Have I Ever. Oh, thank you, Essie, for sharing that. And Punk Shepherd's The Cartographers. And so that gives us an idea. And then next, I just want to talk about Hillary Jacobson, literary agent at ICM. You worked on My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, which I love that book so much. More Than You'll Ever Know by Katie Gutierrez. We just had you on, so you're a veteran of Galley Club, to talk about that book because that was our April pick. And The Club by Ellery Lloyd. So congratulations. All of those are wonderful books.
Thank you.
And so without further ado, let's talk about our May Galley Club pick, which is Tracey Lien's All That's Left Unsaid, which, as Virginia said, has captured my heart. So thank you so much for acquiring it and for telling us all and bringing it to HarperCollins. We are big fans of Tracey and this book. It's a debut novel. It's set in Australia. And Emily, would you give us a little more about the book?
Sure. Well, first, let me show you the gorgeous cover because we are very proud of it and we love it so much. This is an amazing book. It is set in 1996 at the height of the heroin epidemic in Cabramatta, which is a suburb just outside of Sydney, Australia. And it follows our heroine, Key, who has just found out that her brother has been murdered. And he was murdered in a big restaurant, and there were a lot of people around, and this is a small, tight-knit community, and no one will talk about what has happened. And she can't live with not knowing what went wrong to her beloved, brilliant, amazing brother, who she just has stars in her eyes for. And so she goes on a on a quest to find out what really happened. And it's about all of the huge emotions that come with knowing and not knowing, and your family and your community. And it's stunningly beautiful. The writing is on point. And the thing that I think makes it so resonant is that it's so informative about a very specific way of life, a very specific time, but it is also entertaining. It's not something that you're sitting there studying in a school book. You are really, your attention is just held from page one until the end. You can't stop thinking about it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Emily, I have to say, anytime you hand me a book, I know you take such care with it, and I love hearing you talk about them because you are so passionate about it and you take great care of your authors. So thank you.
Thank you.
And so I want to talk a little bit about how the book got into your hands. So Hillary, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, so Tracy queried me, which means just sent me like a cold email with her pitch and the first 10 pages. I think this was January 2021. And it was one of those, happens every blue moon, you just get these queries that you request literally 5 minutes later because the pitch is so strong and the pages, her writing is just gorgeous. I just knew instantly, it was just clear, it was a perfect pitch. So requested it right away, read it right away, got back to her like 2 days later. We decided to work together and we did very minimal edits. It was so solid by the time it got to me. And when we sent it out, I don't know what month it was. It must have been, maybe it was February. It was very soon after.
I feel like it was a little bit later than that, wasn't it? It was like,
it was April. It was April.
April. Yeah.
April. Okay. So something happened in between that made it be April. And maybe just some revisions and figuring out grid time, strategic timing. And I sent it widely, but I remember it was actually fortuitous because a book I had sent out, the last book, I think it was the last one before this that I had sent out, Emily had come really close on, and actually it had been preempted by somebody else, which was the reason that it didn't go to Emily. They had just snatched it away. And I think after that had happened, we had chatted and we had caught up because we hadn't chatted in a while because this is also the pandemic. So you're not in touch with people as much. And I think you mentioned, what you were really hungry for and literary suspense, and that you really wanted a book like Britt Bennett's The Mothers, which I think isn't an obvious comp to this book, but there's something about it that reminds me just in the way it's like this beautiful, really respectful, moving portrait of a community. And I think both books do that really well. So I just remember when I was making my list, I was like, well, I just talked to Emily, and I feel like this fills that spot, even it's so different, like in surface level. So she was on the list, and I think Emily responded to the pitch. Like I was checking my email last night, just reviewing what had happened, and Emily responded 3 minutes after I sent it saying, oh my God. So it was sort of just meant to be from there. And then we had a huge auction. I think it was 10 editors, 8 bidders, and Emily prevailed.
I like that. It's like a book matchmaker, which I don't know that we talk about a lot, that like agents are always having in the back of their mind, I know who reads what. I know that if I get it to that person, if it's not even for them, they'll find someone on their team. So I don't know what that process is like. Do you usually pretty much kind of like, oh, I have them, my Rolodex, I know exactly where this goes?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a mix. Like sometimes you just like totally nail it in your head. You're like, I know they want this. I know this is their favorite thing. And then sometimes it's, I think they like something like this and I'm going to try them. And maybe they'll say, I've actually wanted this. Or they'll say, try my colleague. But it's usually a mix. But so it was fun in that case where I was like, I really feel like this is filling that hole she wants.
It completely filled the hole. Sorry to jump in. It completely filled the hole that I wanted. But you guys are touching on something that I think we don't talk about a ton, or we don't talk about enough. And that is that so much of an editor's job is not just to be editing the books, but to be building relationships with agents and to really get to know the people whose tastes you admire so that you can have those kind of perfect matchmaking moments. Because if Hillary and I hadn't taken the time to sit and chat with each other and talk about what we were hoping for and like what was driving us batty currently in the middle of the pandemic, this might not have come my way, and then I would have been devastated. So I think it's really easy to think that publishing is just about the books, but for me, it's also so much about the relationships with my colleagues at Harper, especially in the library department, the relationships with my agents and my authors. I think that component isn't talked about as much, but it is vital to having successful publications.
Yeah. And Emily, do you want to talk about how, I mean, I know you've talked about how it came to you, but maybe the process after that, like after you got the book and acquired it, like what the editing process was like?
I read it immediately when Hillary sent it to me, which I try to be pretty good about reading stuff, but I dropped everything I was doing and read this one immediately. And I think I got back to you pretty quickly. I got to have the first phone call with Tracy, which out of 10 editors, I always feel like that's a good thing because that means I was on top of my stuff. But we just absolutely hit it off right from the very beginning. I studied abroad many moons ago in Perth, Australia. And so I've always had a sweet spot in my heart for Australia and Australian culture. I love the people there. I think there is something so similar about our cultures, but there's still something really unique about them. And I'm just a huge admirer of them. So Tracy and I had this amazing conversation. And one of the things that really stood out to me in that conversation is that Tracy's book is so much about hope and expectations. And it's this refugee community that is living in Cabramatta. And they have all left their homeland to come to Australia for opportunities so similar to what we see people wanting to do here in the US. And it's warm, it's beautiful, there's jobs, it's a relaxed, laid back lifestyle. People are so kind. But everything that they see is not necessarily accessible to them. Things aren't what they hoped for. Things aren't exactly as easy as they thought it was going to be. The language is hard. The culture is hard. The food is different. Everything about it is hard. And that disconnect just added so much tension for me that I thought was so relatable, so interesting. And it's a little bit easier to see from a slight distance and sitting here in the US, right? And see, oh, well, I can see how this might be hard here also. It's easy, it's a little bit easier to digest. And so we kicked off our first editorial conversation with just like great guns and so much enthusiasm. And so there were so many different elements that we wanted to pull out. So after I got the book, the first thing we did is we basically just like gushed over each other because we had so much fun talking. But then we got deeper into edits, and it was, as Hillary said, it was really a clean manuscript. It was beautiful. I didn't feel like there was a ton of work to do because Tracy has such a good ear for this. She is a journalist by trade. She has her MFA in writing. She's a brilliant essayist. You guys should check out her website because her op-eds and her short essays are just as heartbreaking as this book is. And we really just got to do the fun stuff, the futzing and the pulling out a little bit of suspense here and there and making a few scenes a little bit more emotionally resonant. It was the fun fine tuning, the really kind of deep conversations about, is this the right tone? Do you reveal these characters' motivations in the right moment? It wasn't one of those scenarios where you take something apart and put it back together or cut characters or do anything like that. That was a long-winded answer to your question.
Emily, also, I'm curious because Tracy's actually a really unusual writer. Like, she's so brilliant. So there's some writers when you give them notes and you say, I want you to fix XYZ, and they send it back, and they say, okay, fix XYZ, check, check, check. And I feel like Tracy's someone where you say, okay, I want you to fix XYZ, and she comes back and she's like, okay, I did XYZ. I also addressed like ABCD. Like, she like almost is her own editor. Like, she thought of other, like, she's like smarter than me. She like, obviously, but like she thought of all these other cool things to adjust and make it even better. And I was always just like, wow, you like did this to yourself. Like, I was really always blown away. I don't know if she did the same when you were editing, but like
absolutely.
went above and beyond the note in a cool way.
Oh, she's thoughtful about it, right? And she's thoughtful about the integrity of the piece as a whole. So it's not just, oh, this one little scene here doesn't feel like it's quite clicking yet. Like, let's look at it again. It was, let's look at oh, if this scene and this line of dialogue doesn't feel quite right, then it's probably also not right here and here and here. And she'll go back and she just smooths it ever so slightly, that if you're not really paying attention, you probably wouldn't see. But yes, absolutely. She is her own editor. And I think that's one of the reasons why it came in so clean. She had such a careful tone about everything. Her characters' motivations were realized very carefully. One of the things we worked on a little bit was the character of Denny. And I think he's the brother who is unfortunately killed in the beginning of the novel. And one of the things we talked about a little bit was, after someone dies, it's really easy to just forget about all the bad things about them. But Key's real quest was to really discover who he was, good, bad, imperfect, all of it, because she loves him so dearly, right? And so making sure that that was really realized on the page was kind of an interesting thing to do too. She was very thoughtful and careful about it.
Yeah. I'm curious if either of you think that her journalistic background brings anything to as a writer, like maybe makes her a little different than maybe another debut novelist. I don't know. I always think of like very to the point writing, but this one's not really like that. I don't know. Or maybe telling stories. Maybe that's a good thing. Yeah.
I think kind of what you said is right though. Like even if it's not exact same writing style, it's like that clear, being so clear with the intent and what you're expressing. Like I've never read anything from Tracey where I was confused by what she was saying or felt she had muddled the point. Like I think maybe that sort of ties in. But I don't know.
I think that definitely ties in. For me, she's such a keen observer as well. And that really shows on the page. Hillary and I were talking about this the other day. She's a brilliant essayist, as I said before, but when I read this book, it feels like the best op-ed piece you've read in the New York Times, that you're like, oh, I just get it. It makes so much sense. It makes sense for my life. Like, this is a thing I need to think about in a larger context, but it's a whole book. And there's no wasted words. The characters are so carefully realized that you really relate to them, even if you weren't raised by refugees in Sydney, Australia, right? There's a moment in this book that I think many women will relate to, but particularly women of my age, because Tracy and I are about the same age. And there's a thing about Bonnie Bell chapsticks, and the character has put on so much chapstick that tastes delicious and licked it all off and has created this horrible sore on her mouth where her skin is just so cracked and dry, but like she keeps eating essentially the lip gloss. And so many young girls did that. Everyone was walking around with wounds on their mouths because they were eating too much grape flavored chapstick. But it's those little details that just stick with you.
Yeah. We put the link to Tracy's website in the chat room, so people can go there and click on any one of those stories and see what we're talking about. And I love, Emily, when you said it, I wrote it down because she's so thoughtful about the integrity of the piece as a whole. And I think that really sums up, her writing. I mean, there's nuances that she just goes back and makes sure that it all rings true. We're not ruining anything by talking about the fact that her brother dies, because that's what the story is about. But I was struck by the when they have everybody back to the house, and how odd it is. People don't know, her teachers don't know what to do, and her father is off in one room and her mother's off in the kitchen, and they don't know what to do. And she's sort of, you can just see this clash of culture and expectation. And it's just like, it's so real. And also like in the beginning of the book, talking about how her teachers, I don't know, they mispronounce her name because it's, it's Key, but they call her Kai. And after a while, she's like, all right, whatever. This is like, oh no, it's your name. It's who you are, But I mean, right from the get-go, I just feel like, you really you're in her skin, because you can, it's because of the way it's written that you can really feel how this girl is feeling. And I don't know, it's just it's captivating and frustrating, and you learn so much along the way. And I really think in the bigger picture, if you pull back, I mean, it's a lot of what is, it's just so relevant, sadly, but it's what a cool story. What an interesting story she's written. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the audiobook. I find this fascinating, and I know librarians are going to be all over this. So can you talk a bit about the audiobook?
So one of the things that was really amazing in the pitch that Hillary sent me is that she included this letter from Tracy, and we've included a version of it in the galley. So if you guys go check out the galley, you will get to read it too. But one of the things that Tracy says in this book is that she wanted readers to know how it feels, right? How it feels to never quite be good enough, how it feels to always be striving for perfection, how it feels to feel slightly different from everybody else. And so our audio team did this. What I think is really cool is that when they read the book, they immediately realized that this wasn't going to be a scenario where they send us, a couple of audiobook samples from other mysteries or other literary novels that are beautiful and have great followings. This was a book that needed to be narrated, and needed to be narrated by actors and actresses. There's a couple of different point of view shifts in this, and it needed to be performed by people who might be able to relate to the experiences that Tracy's talking about. And so they filled me in on a little bit of the back and forth. They have worked with some really amazing Australian actors before on audiobooks that they have done. And they, in creating those, one example of which is The Exiles, is that they worked with this audio studio in Australia and really sat down with them and brainstormed about who would be the right actors for this. It was very important to them that they hired people who were Vietnamese and Australian. So everyone in the book who's performing has an Australian accent. It feels I think it's going to feel very authentic. There was just a tremendous amount of thought that was put into this. There was a wide net that was cast, and they had people actually audition with reading the book, which is unusual too. Usually with audiobooks, they'll send you samples of other things they've done before, and it was really cool to get to hear a lot of different options. And we ended up hiring 3 different actors, and I should have gotten pronunciation on their names, so I don't want to butcher them. But Eileen Hyun, Yen Wen, and Amelia Wen. And Amelia is a particularly interesting one because she is 8 years old and she's narrating the character of Lulu. And she's the one who I was mentioning before with the Bonnie Bell lip gloss. But to have that child's voice and perspective, I think is really interesting. I don't know, Hillary, I'd love to know what your thoughts were on hearing all of the casting auditions as well.
Yeah, I mean, similar reaction. And I think just from an agent perspective, it's always such a treat when we feel like a publisher is treating the audiobook as something special and something different and not just like a box to check and just, doing the standard thing. So to think sort of outside the box about like what fits the book, and if that means multiple narrators, if that means super special casting, like all of that's just music to our ears because I think it fits the book so well. But then, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like hearing these voices or these auditions, it's just wild because it really feels like the book comes to life in a crazy way versus just someone reading like a story to you. So I think readers are going to go crazy for it.
Yeah, I'm like really excited. I'm an audiobook listener myself. It's like what I do when I'm folding the laundry or like doing chores around the house. And I've read this book obviously multiple times. I'm going to listen to the audiobook because I think these actors are going to be able to add just a subtle bit of nuance layered on top of the beautiful work Tracy's already done to add their own experience, their own intonation and feeling and emotion to something that's already so captivating. I'm really excited.
Well, I think that attention to detail really goes with a lot of the themes in the book that I think are very important, which is this tokenism, which we've talked about, like being perfect, being the mono minority, and so tokenism, also these first generation kids. I thought that was the most resonant for me, is just this experience of trying to be a kid, but also you have to be a grown up in some ways, because you have to translate for your parents, or she goes to the police department to try to figure things out. She takes it upon herself, and for her brother's murder, and she just thinks that, like, what's happening, all these people don't understand, their grandkids are translating for them. And I think that there's this really beautiful juxtaposition in the book. And so I think you can't really do the audio without having those thoughts. So I think that that's really says a lot, that you went or that they went above and beyond to do that. I don't know.
I'm excited. I think it's going to be cool. But it also touches on this thing that goes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of the acquisition, and that's that there's something for everybody here. And so that when Hillary went out with this book, she also went out simultaneously in the UK, and it ended up actually being a book that we acquired globally for HarperCollins. It's HQ in Australia and the UK, and I think that speaks volumes as well.
That does, and I would love it if you all could talk a little bit more about that for folks who are unsure about that part and how that all works, because that doesn't always happen.
Right.
Almost never.
Because I think, from our standpoint, we go into it and we're like, we just want to find the exact, right home for Tracey's book, and all the places and then the homes that we think are supporting her the best. And, so it's not like we go in being like, we need it to be the same publisher in all the countries, but the way it worked out, I think just Harper really showed up in these auctions, but also just proved that they were just super passionate. And I think there really is something to be said for the synergy when you can have all three working together like that. And it's been really cool so far, because we've been having these publicity and marketing meetings, for all three territories. But they're all sort of piggybacking on each other and collaborating. And I think it's going to be really cool. It's like you get three publishers, the mind melt of that, I think will be really, really amazing.
Yeah, I think that speaks volumes to this book. I mean, this is a really very different, unique, powerful book, and as you say, Emily, it does speak to many different kinds of readers. So yeah.
We have a quote. Do we want to read the quote?
Yes.
It actually just came in today, and I have it in front of me. Hillary, if it's okay if I read it.
I think so.
It is. I think it's okay that we share it. I didn't know if you also had it in front of you.
Oh, no.
Okay. It is, this novel will make you travel through time. It is an embattled Australia in 1996, to a youth shaped by your parents' pain, to the day after the biggest mistake of your life. Tracey Lien's story pulls you back 20 years, then pushes you, heartbroken and stunned, into today's bright light. All that's left unsaid is honest, aching, and filled with beauty. It will transport you. And that is from Julia Phillips, who is the National Book Award finalist for Disappearing Earth. So we are pretty excited to have that love letter from her.
So excited. And I think I told Emily this, or I forget if I mentioned this, but Disappearing Earth was one of the first books I thought of when I read this book, and was one of my comp titles, in my pitch, just because it is a very similar structure of, the different characters in the town, exploring this mystery, sort of exploring this whole new community that's probably not super familiar to a lot of readers. Everything about it feels very in line, even though they're two totally different communities. So to have that praise from Julie, I just feel like it's amazing, because she's such a brilliant writer, and I feel like it means we sort of accomplished what we wanted, or Tracey accomplished what she wanted to. So I think it's just amazing.
Yeah, that's wonderful company. And I know, Hillary, you had said that this is really a question for Lainey. Well, for Lainey to ask, but another one of Lainey's that became another favorite of mine. Essie wasn't here at the time when Valentine came out, but you said that was also another book of yours.
I used Disappearing Earth, Valentine, I think I used the mothers. There might have been another one.
Celeste Ng was the other one that you mentioned. Yeah.
But just sort of all authors who fall into this literary space where there's like a hint of suspense and mystery. And Valentine, especially with that structure, I mean, and it's beyond heartbreaking and moving. So I feel like it just fits perfectly on the shelf.
Yeah, that was an amazing book. Oh God, Harper. We have a couple of folks. We're letting folks know here that they have the e-galley is available on Edelweiss and NetGalley to download and to read, and they'll have. I mean, Lainey announced this title selection for May last week, so folks have said that they need more time to read the book. We want to make sure that the conversation with the author is robust and that you all come with your questions and your comments, and you can't do that if you don't have time to read the book. So we've given you all a little bit more time in between the announcement and when the author comes on Galley Club to talk about her book with you all, which will happen on May 24th, so 2 weeks from today. So there are folks here who are just, as you want to take a look, we've got some comments on Facebook. People are just very excited and saying how fascinating this is and how much they're looking forward to reading it. So please do, because when we get to the 24th, there might be a spoiler. You never know. Whatever comes into the conversation comes, because this is a book club for librarians. The book is not out yet. The book is pre-pub. It's in galley form. And so it's really for librarians. And the feedback so far has been just wonderful. So we're going to keep that going. So download it and read and join us. I'm not wrapping this up. I'm just reminding folks to, make sure that they get the book out onto their reader and dive into this really fascinating story.
Actually, we do have a lot of questions on Crowdcast here. We have 5. So I'm going to start with the first one. Can you talk about the stunning cover, please, and the process you went through to develop it?
Well, that is kind of a fun one. So there's a couple of different elements here. So when I went into the cover meeting, Tracy was amazing, first of all, and had sent me a bunch of pictures of covers that she liked and what she didn't like. And so I felt very well informed on her tastes, but also I felt like I had a good sense of like what we were hoping for. And so I walked into the cover meeting virtually, because we still do these virtually. And I said to the room, I need a cover that is going to be kind of universal. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be really provocative and interesting, but it's also going to show that things aren't quite right, that there's something amiss, that there's some pain or suspense or, is something that there's cracks showing. And our associate publisher looked at me, and she's also a dear friend, and she said, that's really asking a lot. And I was like, I know, but if I don't ask for it, I'm not going to get it. And actually, in the first round of covers, we got what I think is pretty close to a version of this. I shared it with Hillary, and she was very perceptive and said, it's close, but it really needs a little bit more texture. It needs a little bit more movement and nuance, and we needed to futz with the colors a little bit. I don't know if you liked the first version of the cover, Hillary.
I did. I think I was worried. So I was like, okay, I love the texture, like the idea that the paint is peeling. It really shows that, something is breaking down here, that something is darker, suspense. But I was worried that the image that was peeling wasn't beautiful enough. And I was like, we still want readers to treasure this and want to show this cover all over Instagram. And so I was like, I want it to be something beautiful that's peeling. And so I think I think it was like the colors. It was like the smallest tweak too. It wasn't like I thought it was ugly by no means, but it's just like a couple small tweaks did everything.
But your notes on it were so perceptive, and I'm sure you talked with Tracy about that too. But it was like we changed the color of the font on the title, and we added in more lines in the ocean, and it made all the difference. But I have to tell you, in real life, these galleys feel good. They're this like beautiful matte, and the colors are so vibrant. And for like book nerds like we all are, it's just like something you want to own. So if you read the Galley and you love it, you got to hit Virginia up and ask her for a hard copy.
That's right.
Yeah. You know, I
Honestly,
haven't thought about it till this exact moment, but A Woman Is No Man by Etaf Rum, like the way that cover is with kind of the stuff coming through. And actually, I think if you're a fan of that book, you would really like this one too.
I
So,
love that book.
Great point.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And, you know, it would be interesting too to see the original jacket sketch to see, because I think that's fascinating too. I used to
I
work
should
at
have
art
brought 'em.
department a million years ago, and so it was always fascinating to see what was, you know, originally brought forth from the artist. And at that point, they were coming in with oil paintings. It was a very long time ago. And then, you know, to see how that changed and how it morphed. You know, the art directors would say this or that or the other thing, and then they would, you know, something else would come, and it makes a difference. I mean, with this, now you want to kind of like touch that thing, you know, you want to you want to feel those. It does have dimension, and it's really cool. It's really cool. I think jacket art is just such a fascinating subject because it is what people see in the store. It's what you see in the library. It's what speaks to you about that, you know, and there's real psychology and reverence to the book, to the story. What's behind that? What's going to make you pull that open off the shelf and go in? It's so important. And I think you nailed it.
And we spend so much time thinking about it. But then the other thing that I think is so interesting is to see the different covers in the different markets too, right? So the UK has a beautiful, vibrant red cover with a beautiful gold lettering on it. This a little bit of an homage to the temples, I believe, that appear in this book. And in Australia, it's a really they've got the money that they bring in Denny's honor to the Buddhist temple. I forget what they're called. Hillary, can you remind me? Do you remember? It's like it's a beautiful image, and it's so reflective of the story as well. So it's cool to see the three different images all reflective of the story.
Yeah,
and really literary, very literary treatments. But each different and for the different markets.
Yeah. Let's see. Susan Riley says, I had no idea. My Long Island just came way out. I had no idea that there was a sizable community of Vietnamese people in Australia and wondered how the author came up with this group with the plot idea.
This is where Tracy's from originally. She grew up in Cabramatta, and she is a child of Vietnamese immigrants. And she lived in Australia until college or grad school. And when she came over here, she worked for the LA Times and was a journalist for them. She's a remarkable human being. You guys are going to get such a kick out of talking to her.
Oh my God, I cannot wait to have her on.
I have to tell you, I was so lucky this past summer. Tracy was kind enough to come have lunch with me. I was 9 months pregnant. I was like super uncomfortable, but she was such a gem and got on the train and came to have lunch with me in the dead of August. And we sat for 3 hours and just talked. And every story that she told just felt like she was weaving a tale, and she was carrying you from point A to point B. And she's so insightful. You guys are going to fall in love.
Can't wait. Everybody come back on May 24th and meet Tracy, meet the genius behind this book. Essie, do we have more questions in Crowdcast?
Yes. So the next question would be, what were the characteristics that convinced you to publish this novel? How did the decision come about? Do you have different criteria for debut novels?
Do you have different, Hillary, do you have different requirements for debuts than you do for
like taking something on?
Yeah.
It's harder, I think, because I'm at I guess starting out of my career, they're all debuts of what I take on. So it wouldn't be different really requirements, I guess. But the characteristics to publish, I think it's sort of the main things of the writing was gorgeous. You know, the story was page turning, and it felt like a story that hadn't been told and urgently needed to be told. Those were sort of the three things that knocked me away. I think any of those, you don't even necessarily need all three of those things for a book to go, but the fact that it had all three was remarkable. I don't know if Emily, those are the same things that.
I think they are the same things, but I love the way that you captured them, and I love the way that you sort of think about it, because I think about it in the same way too. But I think the first piece of it is that I have to fall in love, right? Like I have to be willing to talk about the book all day, every day for a year, and then keep talking about it after it comes out, because then we're going to do the paperback. But from a business standpoint, you have to see where the audience is. You have to say, I know who this reader is. I know how to package it. I know how to sell it. I know how to position it. I know what kind of publicity and marketing I'm hoping for it. So after I hit that initial level of love, then I have to have a plan for it. And the books that I love, that I know make the most sense for my list and for William Morrow, are the ones where those plans kind of fall quickly into place. It's you have a vision for it, is really what it is, and then you feel confident that you have the enthusiasm and support to be able to enact it. Having in-house support from the sales team, which we had early on. We got great reads from the sales team, from our marketers, from our publicists. People were excited to read the book, and I think that all of those things sort of have to fall in place, because we do see a lot of content, and so it has to check all the boxes.
I think that's such a good point that to me, maybe it's like the obvious thing I don't even say, but like, also, yeah, we just have to love it. Like, which sometimes a book actually checks boxes, but you don't feel passion for it. And I feel like, reading Tracey's book the first time, like I lost my breath, like my heart was beating fast, because it's just that feeling of love. But I forget, because it's like, that is just the rarest thing of all. Then you go from there.
So one of the questions here is from Jean Greenlaw, who wants to know, how does a new author manage to get an agent?
I think it depends on how different agents, accept queries. But for me, my inbox is open and my email is online, and anyone in the world can email me their pitch and their first 10 pages, and I personally will look at it.
Holy Hannah. Everybody's logging off right now to send you their 10 pages. It's wonderful.
So that's how she found me, just blind, like cold querying. Although an interesting sort of connection is Tracy had the same thesis advisor for her MFA as Kate Russell did for the author of my and I think that's maybe how she heard about me or got connected to me. So that was by no means the reason I requested to read more or signed her up, but it's just an interesting connection.
Also, and thank you for saying that, Hillary, and for making yourself available to people, because that's how many people, especially naturally debuts, get discovered. Also, folks, you'll notice that people who write books often will, in their acknowledgments, thank their agent and their editor, and many people do that. They'll go to the book, and if it's a book that's sort of aligned with the kind of book that you're writing, then well, maybe I should find out where that editor is from, how I get in touch with that editor. You'll see that many times in dedications and acknowledgments. So folks, do we have more questions? Because we are going to ask Emily for a snapshot, just a couple of books that she's super jazzed about, in addition to this book. So Essie, if I've missed anything, feel free to ask it, and then we can just quickly ask Emily to tell us about some other titles that she's working on right now.
I think I see two more, just double checking. Okay. Yep, two more. All right. So this one kind of rings back to what we were talking about before with a criteria. It sounds like writing and the story are both compelling and exciting. When a manuscript catches your attention, which comes first for you?
I think it depends on the book, which is kind of not the answer you're probably looking for. I think that if there's a good hook that pulls you in, you can sometimes see past the writing, but if the writing is brilliant and beautiful and you can't look away, sometimes you can find a way to like build that hook in. The best of both worlds is when they're both there.
Yeah, I agree. It's so hard to discern because it varies, but it's almost just the bad answer is just it's both.
Julie Leplow says, so many outstanding debuts lately, and yet I'm curious how you evaluate a debut versus an author you've worked with for years.
I think my authors would tell you that I'm very annoying and I try to push them always, all the time, and that I am a slave driver and making their knuckles bleed.
But Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when you talked with Lori Rader Day on the podcast, right, we were talking about the bricks and you were like, an editor, it's like the author builds this wall of like little bricks and gets it all set. And then the editor comes and like deconstructs the wall and takes the bricks down. She's like, you knocked my bricks down, but then you both build it together and put the cement in. And I love that analogy.
Yeah, sometimes you got to take a wall down because it's just in the wrong spot, right? Like, and it's always a conversation. It's never me being like, look, you can't do. I try not to be like, no, you can't do this, unless there's something like they really can't do. I try to have it be a conversation, because it's the author's book at the end of the day, right? So like, hopefully if I am able to ask the right questions, and we can chat it through and be really collaborative about it, then they're going to come up with something better than I ever suggest. And it's what Hillary was saying before about Tracy, where it's like, you're calling out like a little bit something here, a little bit something there. And suddenly they go back and they're like, oh, well, this whole character, this voice needed a little bit more refinement. And we needed to play with this storyline a little bit further. So like, hopefully asking the right questions is kind of how that builds it back up.
Sounds like a therapy session.
That's what I was thinking. But also, just to clarify, Lori was not mad about you breaking the bricks down. She was excited for that process. So.
No, we always have fun chatting, Lori.
Love her. Yeah, and that's this good opportunity to talk about the podcast where we do editors unedited, and many times we have Emily talking with her editor. So if you find this fascinating, which I know that you do, check that out too, because it's a really cool insight. It's Inside Baseball, which is what this is. Maybe we should rename this Inside Baseball. I don't know. So, Essie, if there are no more questions, correct me if I'm wrong, then we'll ask Emily to talk just for a few minutes, because it's already 2:53, the hour flew, about some books that you're loving. So before we do, Essie, do we have everything done?
We're good here. Yep.
Okay. Emily, in addition to this terrific book that we're talking about, so excited about.
One more show. There we go.
What is it? Do it. Show it up again.
No, this is all that.
All That's Left Unsaid.
One more plug.
One more plug. All the plugs. Next 2 weeks from now. My God. So beautiful.
Yeah. Well, can I tell the small tidbit that Tracy emailed me about? So we're having Tracy on the 24th, so you can hear straight from the author. Very excited. So get your questions ready, read before that, because there will be spoilers. We're excited. But Tracy emailed me right after we got off when we announced the book, and she had said that she was just really thankful for all the support, and she loved that, especially the support from libraries, because she said she loves that it's for an audience of librarians, because she was a library monitor in 5th grade. And she, I think, took that very seriously. So we can ask her about it on the 24th. It was very sweet.
Love that.
Yeah.
So sweet.
Tracy was like a child prodigy. I mean, she's like an adult prodigy. I don't know if that's a thing, but she's like superhuman. You guys need to ask her lots of cool questions about what she's been up to, because she's a genius.
Can't wait.
Can't wait. Can't wait. Okay. Hillary, don't go away. But Emily, tell us some books.
Okay, so on sale today, I have The Murder Rule by Dervla McTiernan. That is wonderful. And the tagline is, "No one is innocent in this story." So if you're looking for a good murder mystery, you got to check that out. For those of you that don't know, the concept of the murder rule in US law is that, say you're an Uber driver and you're picking up your guy from McDonald's, and you go from McDonald's and you drop him off at home, and he says, hey, wait in the car, I'll be right back. And your meter's ticking and you're waiting, and he kills somebody inside and then jumps back in the car, and you drive him back to McDonald's to get his car or wherever he is. You are guilty of murder. And so that is the theory and the kind of idea behind this book. I will not get into too much more than that, but it's very good. It's very interesting. Dervla McTiernan is also from Australia. Small connection that I just made in my head. But she's delightful. She's in the US this week. If you guys are around and want to come see her, you should. Then the other book I don't have a copy of to show you, I'm sorry, is Girl Forgotten by Karen Slaughter, which is coming out, I believe it's August. It's the third week of August, like August 21st or something. This is another Karen Slaughter blockbuster. For those of you who loved pieces of her, there are a couple of recurring characters. This is a different story, but Andrea Oliver does appear. She is now a U.S. Marshal, and she is looking into a case that is fishy. And it's great. It's Karen. It's got everything you could ever ask for. Great writing, lots of murder, totally crazy people.
Cool
So
jacket, too.
it's got a cool jacket, I think.
Yeah.
I was pretty pleased with how that one came out also.
And that one on sale August 23rd.
I was not too far off. Thank you for helping me out with that. I appreciate it.
Sure.
So I think that one's going to be great. And then this fall, I am on the Tracy channel all fall, but we have a mass market edition of The Lightning Rod by Brad Meltzer that's coming out. And so if you guys were kind of hesitant to check it out in hardcover, you should check it out in mass market. He is so kind and so smart, and there's so much heart in these stories, and so many good historical facts that you get to pick up on. It's a good one to check out. And Zig and Nola are they've got my heart. So that's what I'm up to.
He's got my heart. You know, when we did those Heroes books a bunch of years ago, and he spoke at the Texas Library Association, and he had them on their feet. He is you're right. He is such a kind, thoughtful man, and just a wonderful writer, and can really, speak to so many different audiences with his books. And just a lovely human being. I'm so glad we have him under our roof.
Yeah. And I love his Xavier Riddle books too, because my 6-year-old thinks they are the best.
And anything that doesn't know about Lucille Ball, hello, you have Brad Meltzer to thank for that. I mean, did all those books. He's just great.
Yeah.
I've only met him once, and I felt like I knew him for 10 years. He's so kind.
Yeah. Well, that's so exciting. I mean, there's so much going on in your world, Emily Crump, and thank you for the books that you're working on for readers everywhere. And Hillary, thank you. I'm going to turn it back to Lainey, because it's Lainey's to wrap up. I just wanted to say my thanks, and I thank you.
Well, I think you did a great job. I don't really have much other to say other than thank you so much to both of you for being here. Tracy, on the 24th of May, it's going to be super fun. And I know we've really set it up to have a lot to dive into. Read the book. We have the e-galleys up. I know a couple people asked about audio. It's not available yet because they're working very hard on it. So be patient. But the e-galley is there. Take a look at it. You will not want to stop reading, and bring your questions for Tracy on May 24th. And a big thank you to Emily and Hillary.
Thank you. We're so happy to be here.
Yes, ditto. Thank you so much.
Great. This has been such a pleasure. This book goes on sale in September, but pretend that it goes on sale on the 24th of May so that you can read it now and talk to the author, because this book club is for you librarians. So, Galley Club, all that's left unsaid. We are so excited. And Tracey Lien will be here next 2 weeks, 24th. Okay, take good care all. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, everyone.